Disclaimer: this story is a work of fiction created solely for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to actual people, places, or events is purely coincidental. It contains suspenseful themes involving stalking, emotional trauma, and neighborhood conflict. Viewer discretion is advised. The story emphasizes awareness around personal safety and the hidden dangers that can exist behind seemingly normal faces. It had been almost a year since I'd seen my older sister Rachel in person, and the timing of her invitation couldn't have been better. She'd recently moved into a quiet suburban neighborhood after a messy divorce, her attempt to start fresh, find some peace, and rebuild what she had lost. I packed a small bag, drove a few hours out of the city, and arrived late Friday afternoon. Her house was picture-perfect from the outside: white siding, a rose garden, and a little porch swaying gently in the breeze. But as I stepped inside, I immediately sensed something was off. The home was spotless, maybe too spotless, like someone was trying too hard to appear normal. The curtains were always half-drawn, and every door had multiple locks, even the bedroom ones. The air inside wasn't welcoming, it was tense. Rachel greeted me warmly, but there was a certain edge in her smile, a guardedness in her eyes. She hugged me tightly, held on a little too long, and asked how long I could stay. I told her I'd planned to stay the weekend, maybe longer if she needed. Her shoulders eased slightly. Over tea that evening, I asked her how she liked the new neighborhood. Her response was vague. "It's quiet," she said. "Too quiet sometimes." She glanced toward the front window as she spoke, the way someone does when they're expecting someone to show up unannounced. She told me about the neighbors. Most of them were nice. A retired couple next door, a family with kids across the street. Then she paused. "And there's Harold," she added. "He lives 2 houses down." "What about him?" I asked casually. She shook her head. "Just odd. Keeps to himself. Watches everything." We didn't talk more about him that night. Instead, we settled into the couch with a movie and popcorn like old times. But even then, I caught her glancing at the windows every so often, her fingers tightening around the blanket. I chalked it up to the stress of her divorce and moving into a new place. New surroundings always took a while to feel like home. But by the time I went to bed, I had the strange sense that this house wasn't just haunted by memories, but by something living. Something or someone Rachel wasn't ready to talk about yet. And I was about to find out exactly what that was. The next morning began peacefully. I woke up to the smell of coffee and the sound of birds outside Rachel's kitchen window. She had already left for work. She taught art at the local high school and left me a note with breakfast instructions and the Wi-Fi password. I took my time sipping coffee, scrolling through my phone, and enjoying the stillness. It really was quiet here, almost unnaturally so. No traffic, no kids shouting, no dogs barking. Just silence and sunlight. I was halfway through making toast when I heard a knock at the door. Not a loud, urgent knock. Just 3 calm, evenly spaced taps. I wasn't expecting anyone, but I figured it was one of Rachel's neighbors. Maybe someone saw me arrive yesterday and came to welcome the unfamiliar face. I wiped my hands and opened the door. There he was. A tall, neatly dressed man in his 40s. Gray hair combed perfectly to one side. A clean button-up shirt tucked into dark jeans. He smiled. A slow, careful smile that never quite reached his eyes. "Good morning," he said, his voice pleasant and smooth. "I'm Harold. I live just down the street. Saw you come in yesterday. Thought I'd come by and say hello." "Oh," I replied, a bit startled. "Hi. I'm visiting Rachel, her sister." "Yes," he said quickly, "I thought so. You look like her." That comment hung in the air a second too long. He didn't make any move to shake hands. Just stood on the porch, staring slightly past me into the house. My grip on the door tightened a little. "Well, nice to meet you," I offered politely. Harold didn't blink. "Lovely home she has. You know, this street is very safe. Very quiet. Everyone looks out for one another. I try to keep an eye on things myself." He said it with pride, like he was the self-appointed sheriff of the neighborhood. "That's good," I said, trying to maintain a neutral tone. Then he leaned forward just slightly and said, "Your sister's been keeping to herself. She doesn't come outside much. Some people find that rude." There was no smile this time. Just a statement, flat and firm. I forced a chuckle. "She's been through a lot. Just settling in, I think." Harold's eyes narrowed slightly, then he gave a short nod. "Well, just thought I'd be neighborly. If you need anything. I'm always watching." With that, he turned and walked away, no wave, no goodbye, just that strange, rigid posture as he crossed the street and disappeared into his house. I closed the door slowly, locking both bolts behind me. My heart beat a little faster than before. There was something unsettling about him, his stare, his words, the way he said, always watching. I brushed it off as paranoia, maybe influenced by Rachel's nerves the night before. But deep down I already knew that wasn't just a neighborly visit. That was a warning. That night, as dusk painted the sky in deep gold and purple, I found myself standing at Rachel's front window, peeking through the blinds. I don't know what I expected to see, maybe just reassurance that the neighborhood was, in fact, the quiet suburb it claimed to be. But what I saw made my breath catch. There he was again. Harold. Standing motionless in his driveway facing directly toward Rachel's house. He wasn't doing anything. Not trimming bushes. Not taking out trash. Just watching. His arms hung by his sides, stiff, and his gaze never shifted, not even when a car drove by. It was like he was waiting for something. Or someone. I stepped back, hoping he hadn't seen me. I didn't want to alarm Rachel unnecessarily, but something about the way he stood there sent a chill up my spine. It didn't feel like innocent curiosity. It felt like surveillance. When Rachel returned home an hour later, she looked tired more than usual. Her posture drooped. Her eyes looked like they hadn't had a full night's sleep in weeks. As we sat down for dinner, I hesitated before bringing it up. "Hey," I said gently, "I met Harold earlier today." She froze. I saw it, the flicker of dread behind her eyes. She set her fork down slowly. "What did he say?" "Just introduced himself," I said cautiously. "Said he was watching the neighborhood. Mentioned you don't come outside much." Rachel looked down at her plate. "That man," she whispered, "is not normal." "What do you mean?" "He's persistent," she said, choosing her words carefully. "When I first moved in, he seemed friendly. Came by a lot. Asked questions. Too many questions. About my routines. About whether I lived alone. Then I started finding notes. On my porch. In the mailbox. Nothing threatening, but strange." "Like what?" She looked me dead in the eye. "Notes that said things like, 'You looked sad today. Smile more.' Or, 'You cook a lot of pasta. You must love carbs.'" "How would he know that?" "Unless he was watching every day." A silence hung between us. "Did you report it?" I asked. "I did. But it wasn't illegal. The police said unless he entered my property or made a threat, there wasn't much they could do." I clenched my jaw. "So he gets to just stand there and watch?" Rachel nodded. "He hasn't done anything technically wrong. But I keep my curtains closed. I changed my locks. I even bought pepper spray. I don't sleep through the night anymore." She looked away, ashamed, though she had no reason to be. "I thought maybe I was overreacting," she said. "But now that you've seen him, maybe I'm not." I reached across the table and took her hand. "You're not. We'll figure this out." Because suddenly it wasn't just Rachel's paranoia anymore. It was real. And Harold's eyes were on both of us now. That night, long after Rachel went to bed, I sat alone at the kitchen table with my laptop open and the glow of the screen lighting my face. I couldn't sleep, not after what I'd seen. Not after what Rachel had told me. I knew I wouldn't rest until I understood who this man really was. I typed Harold plus Rachel's neighborhood name into the search bar. At first, nothing alarming appeared. Old HOA newsletters. A few property tax records. An obituary for a woman named Emily Kroll, Harold's wife. She had died almost 2 years ago. The cause of death? Unexplained disappearance, presumed deceased. Presumed. Not confirmed. I clicked through article after article. Emily had vanished without a trace. No break-in. No forced entry. Just gone. Her car was still in the driveway. Her purse still on the kitchen counter. And Harold had reported her missing 48 hours later, telling police she must have gone out for a walk and never returned. There had been searches. News coverage. But no leads. Eventually, the investigation went cold. Harold was never arrested. Never even officially named a suspect. But the comments section on the old news articles painted a clearer picture. Everyone knows he did it. The cops just didn't have proof. Used to follow her around in public even during their marriage. Creepy as hell. After she disappeared, he installed cameras all over the house. Total psycho. No one trick-or-treats at his house anymore. Chills ran down my arms. I clicked through satellite images of his home. Sure enough, on the front porch, under the roofline, on the fence post, tiny dots that could only be security cameras. I dug deeper. A Reddit post from a local true crime forum caught my attention. "If you live near Cedar Pines, be careful. The man on Maple Lane watches everything. He stares at my wife through the blinds. His wife vanished and now he's obsessed with women who look like her. Especially those who live alone." My heart dropped. Rachel didn't just look like Emily. Based on the one blurry photo I found, she could have been her twin. It made sense now. The over-attentiveness, the notes, the obsessive staring. Harold wasn't just being weird. He was looking to replace someone, and Rachel fit the profile perfectly. I shut the laptop and stared into the dimly lit hallway. The house felt different now. Not just eerie, but vulnerable. We weren't just dealing with an eccentric neighbor. We were living across from a man who had possibly gotten away with something terrible and was still searching. Rachel wasn't paranoid. She was being hunted. Silently, methodically. And if we didn't act soon, we might not get a second chance to stop him. The next morning felt different. Heavy. Like the house itself knew we were no longer in denial. Rachel greeted me in the kitchen with a forced smile, but her eyes were ringed with exhaustion. She hadn't slept either, she didn't need to say it. We both knew the weight of the truth that had settled between us like smoke we couldn't clear. I didn't tell her everything I had found online yet, not the Reddit posts, not the theories, not the community whispers. I wasn't ready to set fire to her hope. But I did ask one thing, has he ever come into your yard? She nodded slowly. A few times. I'd catch him near the side gate. He'd claim he was checking for his cat or trimming a bush near the property line. Always an excuse. And the police? I asked. They said without video or a direct threat it was all circumstantial. They told me to keep a log. Like I'm supposed to build a case myself. I looked around the house. No cameras. No alarms. Just locked doors and faith. That afternoon we went to run errands, mostly to get out of the house. When we returned just before sunset we found the trash bins overturned in the driveway. The garden lights Rachel had carefully placed in front of her porch were smashed. Small, sharp shards of green plastic and metal scattered across the grass. It was too specific to be random. Too targeted. Rachel's hands trembled as she stared down at the mess. He's angry now, she said under her breath. He knows you're here. He's trying to rattle me. I moved quickly, snapping photos of the scene, documenting every detail. This time I told her everything I'd found. About his wife. About the neighborhood's whispers. About how closely she resembled the missing woman. I expected her to crumble, but she didn't. She straightened. I'm not going to live like this anymore, she said, voice steely. I spent 2 years shrinking. Hiding. Not again. That night, we drove to the nearest hardware store and picked up motion lights, camera doorbells, and a simple home surveillance kit. We spent the next few hours setting it all up. I covered the front porch, the back gate, and the side yard with cameras. Every entrance had alarms. I even replaced the screws on the front door with longer, steel ones. Rachel watched me work silently, a mix of fear and relief in her expression. For the first time, we weren't waiting, we were acting. But Harold wasn't going to stop quietly. That night, just past midnight, the doorbell camera picked up motion. He didn't knock. He didn't speak. He just stood there on the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, staring at the camera. Then he turned and walked away. Rachel and I watched the footage together. We didn't speak. We didn't sleep. Because we both knew something unspoken had shifted. He knew we were watching now too. The next day passed like we were walking on glass. We barely spoke. The cameras had caught Harold standing outside our house at midnight, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. He hadn't touched anything. Hadn't trespassed. But his presence had said everything. I know you see me. And I'm not afraid. We checked the footage repeatedly, hoping to find something more, some detail that would justify a police report. But legally he had done nothing. Again. That night, Rachel double-checked every lock twice before going to bed. I stayed up late in the living room, scrolling through true crime forums, looking up self-defense laws, and rewatching the doorbell footage frame by frame. I must have fallen asleep on the couch sometime after 2 a.m. Then I heard it. A soft creak. Not from inside the house, but the backyard. I sat up fast, my body instantly alert. I checked the live camera feeds on my phone. The front and side yard were still, the infrared sensors steady. But the backyard? The signal was static, offline. No, I whispered, fumbling to refresh the feed. Nothing. The connection was dead. Just then, I heard a faint tap against the back door's glass panel. Not loud. Not forceful. Just intentional. My breath caught. I reached for the baseball bat I had placed under the coffee table earlier that evening. Rachel's room was down the hall, but I didn't want to shout yet. What if I was wrong? I crept toward the back of the house. The kitchen was dark, the only light coming from the digital clock on the microwave. The tapping had stopped. Then I saw it. Pressed gently against the glass was a single red rose. And next to it, taped to the door, was a note. Just 2 words scrawled in heavy ink, just like her. I stood frozen. Before I could move, I heard footsteps in the hall. Rachel. She had woken up. I turned just in time to stop her from coming closer. Back up, I whispered. Don't come into the kitchen. She froze. What's wrong? He was here, I said. The camera's down. He left something. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just closed her eyes and whispered, it's starting again. We called the police immediately. This time, when they arrived, we had evidence. The note. The rose. The broken camera, its wires clipped at the base. But still, there was no forced entry. No fingerprints. And no Harold. The officers filed a report. They were sympathetic but ultimately helpless. He's toying with you, one said. But unless he enters the home or threatens you directly, we're on our own, Rachel finished for him. After they left, we stayed up, lights on in every room. We took turns watching the cameras. Rachel clutched her bear spray. I kept the bat beside me. The quiet outside wasn't peaceful anymore, it was loaded. Waiting. Because now we knew Harold wasn't just watching. He was rehearsing. By morning, the fear had turned into resolve. No more waiting. No more reacting. If Harold wanted to play mind games, we were done being the targets. We were going to turn the pressure back onto him. Rachel contacted a local security company first thing and scheduled a full upgrade, industrial-grade locks, smart sensors on every door and window, and high-resolution night vision cameras with cloud backup. I posted the footage from the broken backyard camera and the rose-tape note to a local neighborhood watch group online, along with a carefully worded caption. My sister's neighbor left this on her back door last night after disabling our camera. His wife went missing 2 years ago. This isn't harmless. The reaction was instant. Dozens of comments came in, others in the community had stories. Women who had once lived near Harold said they'd felt watched. One woman said her dog would bark toward his house at night. Another posted that she caught him filming through her hedges once but didn't report it because she was scared of retaliation. One man even claimed he heard Harold screaming someone's name in the middle of the night during the week his wife went missing. The post went semi-viral in the local area, shared hundreds of times. It was no longer just a private nightmare. It was public now. And that changed everything. Local news stations picked it up. A journalist reached out and asked if Rachel would be willing to speak on camera. She said no, but gave permission to share the footage. A segment aired 2 days later, showing Harold's late-night visit, the rose, and the chilling note. Within hours, everything escalated. Law enforcement reopened the investigation into Emily Kroll's disappearance. Detectives arrived at Harold's home with a search warrant, reportedly based on new community testimony and public pressure. They combed through his backyard, his shed, his basement. He was brought in for questioning, not just about his wife, but about his behavior toward Rachel and other women in the neighborhood. He didn't get arrested that day. But something had shifted. The next evening, Rachel and I stood on the porch watching the quiet street. For the first time, Harold's blinds were closed. No porch light. No movement. His car was gone. Do you think he's scared? She asked quietly. I think he finally knows we're not afraid of him anymore, I said. Rachel exhaled, her breath shaky but relieved. For the first time in a long time. I feel like I'm not hiding. She wasn't. She was reclaiming her life, her safety, her home. And Harold, whether he was ever charged or not, was now exposed. His secret world cracked open under the pressure of visibility. Because monsters like him thrive in silence. And we made sure the whole town was listening now. It's strange how a house can hold its breath. After everything, Rachel's home didn't feel haunted by fear anymore, but by relief. A weight had been lifted even if Harold hadn't been officially charged yet. His sudden disappearance from the neighborhood felt like the beginning of the end. No more watching. No more late-night knocking. No more roses taped to the door. Rachel and I sat on the porch the following Sunday morning, sipping coffee. The sun painted long shadows on the lawn, and for once it was quiet in the right way. Birds chirped. A neighbor walked her dog. Life was cautiously returning to normal. I talked to a realtor, Rachel said, her voice calm. I think I'm going to sell. I nodded. Probably for the best. It's not just because of Harold, she added. It's because I don't want to live with what happened here. I want new walls. New energy. Somewhere I can sleep without looking over my shoulder. She wasn't running. She was choosing to move forward, and that was different. Later that week, we packed up the cameras and boxed some of Rachel's belongings. She had already found a new rental on the other side of town, near a park, with better lighting and friendlier neighbors. She didn't even flinch this time when we talked about security. She was already planning her new locks and surveillance system like she was hanging artwork. This time not out of fear, but confidence. 2 days before the move, a detective called. They had found evidence linking Harold to a storage unit registered under a fake name. Inside were personal items of his wife's, diaries, clothing, and most chilling of all, a photo album. Each page held photographs of women in the neighborhood, some taken from afar, some through windows. Rachel was in it. So was I. That was the final nail. Enough to arrest him. Enough to start building a real case. We never saw Harold again. Rachel moved out that weekend. I helped her settle into her new place and stayed a few extra days. She slept with her door unlocked for the first time in 2 years. Just to prove she could. The night before I left, we stood in her new kitchen. The mood was light. We joked about ordering terrible takeout and binge-watching cheesy crime shows. Before I left, she hugged me tighter than usual and said, "You believed me before I even told you everything." That saved me more than anything. "You saved yourself," I said. "I just reminded you how strong you already were." As I drove away the next morning, I passed her old street one last time. Harold's house was dark, taped off, silent. The kind of silence that did feel peaceful for once. Because we learned something through it all. Sometimes the scariest people don't wear masks or hide in shadows. They wave from across the street. They smile. They say hello. But we also learned something else. When you stop being silent, monsters lose their power. 13.